Hi guys, Seb Ford here for GameSpot, and we are taking a look at F1 2013. In fact, a very, very early look at F1 2013. I'm joined by Paul Gilles from Codemasters. Paul, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Certainly in terms of our journey so far, F1 2010, skipping that year in 2009, coming out with a bang, delivering a game which is not only the best-selling, won the BAFTA, great reviews. Solidifying in 2011 with the safety car and a little bit more of a multiplayer focus. And then really since then we've been trying to get what you're seeing now off the ground, which is classic content. And that's in the game for the first time in F1 2013. It's it's been a long, well, it seems like an eternity long process. We had some sort of design decisions to make in terms of what were we going to go for. And I think if we were going to try and replicate a particular year, very early on it became apparent that was going to be very, very difficult. Team ownership had switched hands so many times, so trying to track down the specific person you need to speak to who's got clearances for the car, trying to track down the people you need to speak to clear the sponsors on the car was a challenge. In addition to that, we didn't just want to offer a time trial experience, something that other games have done, but as ever at Codemasters, we like to innovate, we like to drive things forward. And as much as the car is the star in all racing games, and that's true in Formula 1 as well, certainly when I was growing up, there was a lot of resonation and passion for the drivers as well. So, that was a key component of it. Not only clear the car and the sponsors, but also who could we have pilot these cars that would make sense. So what we've managed to do is create a new game mode. It's available off the main menu. It's got its totally own unique strand of the game. This just demo's being very badly driven by our lead car handling designer, Lee, by the way.
It's an old car, that's his
excuse.
It's
an old car, he's not used to it, absolutely. What we've managed to do is create a new game mode accessible from the main menu called F1 Classics. So that's obviously historic content brought into F1 for the first time in our Codemasters franchise. So as soon as you go into that strand of the game, you're going to kind of be taken back visually to the sort of TV feel and audio feel of yesteryear in terms of what you're experiencing. Right from the fact that the garage is different, it's not a showroom environment, which is what's true for the rest of the 2013 content.
Sure, you also seem to have like a little bit less track runoff when safety laws were a little bit more lax. And even the colour, is that a deliberate thing? It looks a bit sort of indie at the moment.
Yeah, so the colour treatment, we've got a new art director this year, Anthony. He very, very much looked at the whole game, what can we do visually to improve it, but very specifically, how can we take this F1 Classics and kind of put our own stamp on it? So whilst it's a sort of contemporary event where we're bringing back a mixture of teams from across a decade, both the 80s and the 90s, and in addition to the original drivers, we've got some returning team legends coming back. More on that in a little bit, because obviously the drivers are a huge part of Formula 1 and we've got an amazing lineup. We're only releasing a tiny bit of that information here today.
Sure.
But in terms of taking the gamers and the people who've watched TV back in time, so from a UK perspective, Murray Walker,
yep.
Looking at a strong tie-in with a well-known music track as well. And obviously, from a gameplay point of view, just date stamping it a little bit. You can see the on-screen elements of the HUD are date stamped for the 80s.
Sure.
It means bringing back, like I said, a mixture of original drivers and world champions as well. If we were to take this forward into the 90s, you'd see slightly less of a colour filter on there. Again, all the on-screen TV elements are more akin to maybe the ITV days, the sort of blues and yellows, and it's all updated a little bit more. So here you're seeing the hand come off of the wheel and change gear, and obviously these cars are up to 1,000 brake horsepower and very, very happy, as Lee's demonstrating very well. 90s, they've obviously got a lot more grip, all the gearboxes and advancements in technology really move forward. So gamers are going to be able to experience cars from as early as 1980 all the way through to the late 90s in terms of content across the game in F1 Classic Edition.
Sure. So I can imagine fans of F1 are going to be mad for being able to go all the way back through the 80s and 90s. Is that something you guys always had in mind for the future? You were like, all right, in X number of years, when we've really got this franchise down, we want to go and take a look back in time, or is this something that people have just been going, this is what we want?
No, we're creating F1 games for fans. We're very much fans ourselves as well. So from my perspective and from Steve's perspective, this is on the roadmap from the beginning. It just takes a huge push to get it over the line. So a lot of fundamental basics had to be put in place for F1 2010. The concepts of practice sessions and the qualifying format and the weather and the rubbering in of the race line, all those type of things, solidifying that, like I said, in 2011 with safety car and other bits and pieces. But really, since then, this is something that we've kind of had floating around in the background. And other games have had classic cars previously, but we didn't want to just offer a time trial experience, which is what you're seeing here. So not only is there time trial and time attack, but there's a Grand Prix mode which takes all of the cars of the 80s and races them against each other, against various different drivers who perhaps never raced on the same piece of tarmac at the same time, and really creates a sort of celebration of the decade feel. And we always want to innovate. We don't want to just kind of churn out content that people have seen and tried before, and it's in that area of the game where F1 Classics really comes into its own.
Sure. So going back to the race that we're looking at right now, tell us a little bit about the car, the track, and can you tell us anything about the driver?
The driver, in terms of Lee, is obviously not doing too well. If I was a team owner, I'd be giving him his marching orders pretty quickly. The track is Jerez. This is available. So we're doing two editions of the game this year. We're doing F1 2013 Classic Edition, which has all the 2013 content. It also has 1980s content and Brands Hatch and Jerez. The Classic Edition also has 90s as a downloadable code and classic tracks. That's going to be a limited edition, first run, premium packaging, etc. So we're also delivering F1 2013 as a standalone game mode, which comes with F1 the 2013 content, 80s, plus Brands Hatch and Jerez, and the rest is available via DLC. You can't mix and match the decades of the cars. The licensing restrictions plus technical restrictions in terms of we've spent a lot of effort getting the actual audio recordings of these cars, which has been a huge undertaking in terms of trying to get these old cars fired up. The cost involved, the amount that they break down compared to modern cars is literally unbelievable. In F1 Classics as a Grand Prix mode, you'll be able to race as and against drivers. That was a key thing for us. The car is the star, but there are so many legends of yesteryear. So like I said earlier, it's a mixture of returning original drivers and team legends. Today we're announcing a few of those. We've got, obviously, over the coming weeks we're gonna clear and announce a few more. So for the 80s, Mario Andretti, Gerhard Berger.
Yep.
Drivers such as that. For the 1990s, world champions Jacques Villeneuve, Alain Prost, Eddie Irvine, David Coulthard.
Ah, brilliant.
So there are going to be a number of superstar names. I think when the full driver lineup is announced, people are going to be really excited about what we're going to offer. We haven't taken our eye off of the improvements of 2013 as well. So advancements in handling and AI, as you would expect. We've created an additional difficulty level this year in response to some feedback that we were getting and some balancing things that perhaps Legend was kind of okay and the novice level was kind of okay, but perhaps there was too much of a jump between different levels. So we got an extra difficulty level this year. We've got 5 levels of brake assist. Certainly for the novice, just one was kind of having it on permanently was too restrictive after a while, but when you turn it off, giving them the confidence to sort of stay on the racetrack wasn't happening. So we've got sort of 5 levels of brake assist this year. Handling, like I said, is all based on the 2013 season, so Mercedes being blisteringly quick but not particularly kind on their tyres, Lotus being slightly different. And we've got a mid-session save this year, which we're really excited about. It's something, again, which we've had on the agenda for a while. There's quite a few technical things that we had to get in place before we could announce that. So the thing that makes F1 cool is the fact that if you don't get into the first corner, gaining positions, you lose a load, maybe you lost a nose cone, maybe you're not particularly good at starts, Mark Webber, for example, he doesn't get to the end of lap 1, pull into the pits and say, well, that's me done, and try and find the next race. There are plenty of ways and means to get yourself back in the race.
Sure.
And mid-session save really allows more people to experience longer races where you're going to see weather changes, you're going to see safety car, you're going to see your car developing punches and mechanical faults, you're going to have to fuel manage at some point and tyre manage, all these things which only perhaps a small-ish percentage of people have been able to experience up until now because they've had an hour and a half to spare it, in any one go. So you can save as many times as you want in any session, just so that the game's tailored to the length of time that you can dedicate to that experience.
Sure. But no ignorable team orders coming down over the radio.
Not quite at the moment. No. There's certainly something for the future. I think
you can have that one for next year. With the V8s.
So loading into a 90s scenario now. I didn't see which car you picked, Lee. What have you got? Williams. Mansell's? So obviously, probably one of my personal favourites. I've been a Formula One fan since 1985, not missed a race, and 1992 season was particularly special for me. I had a large passion for Michael. I can see a lot of Lewis fans in today's era. He reminds me very much of what Mansell used to be. It's kind of you can't imagine Nigel particularly perhaps appreciating managing fuel or tyres. When you look at his career, I often think that he should have had loads more race wins. Such a great driver, such a aggressive overtaker. But it was usually podium win or bust. So yeah, we're driving his car. Obviously, sounds completely different engine recording. You can see that the filter's been toned down a little bit. Again, tied into the sort of TV look and the audio style of the day. Lee's driving hasn't improved, unfortunately. The on-screen elements that you can see there, just giving it a different flavour. So not only is this going to look great in terms of screenshots and videos, but obviously just feels different from everything, the way that the handling's coming through the wheel. And each individual era brings something new drivers, new cars to experience, new visuals, and it's almost like a mini game within a game, if that makes sense.
Is this a different view we're looking through here as well? I noticed we've lost the wheel, or is this just the design of the car?
Yeah, there are a number of different cameras. We're still fine tuning them now. So we've got TV pod offset, which is what you see on the side when usually on the TV where it comes to one side. You've got the two chase views. You've got nose cam, and you've got cockpit view. And I think cockpit view is always great for the authentic guys who really love that experience. I mean, I do like it, I must admit. I'm always stretching in my seat a little bit to try and look a little bit further over. That must be what it's like in real life. Just let me see a little bit more of what it's like to drive these cars.
It's funny, actually, because I can imagine cockpit view must be massively popular for fans of genuine Formula One. And then you look at sort of your other Cody's franchises like Grid 2, where they've said, oh, not enough people use it, we're going to get rid of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it all depends what you're trying to do with the experience. Obviously, with games, particularly like Formula One, but perhaps with the dirt game as well, you're trying to authentically recreate a sport. And I think the statistics would show that the stats are slightly different. I mean, when you do look at the stats on any game, obviously it's massively skewed to people who play on the pad rather than the wheel. That's just the way it is, and to people who play with chase cam. But in Formula One, the percentages are kind of a little bit more towards people who do play with cockpit cam or TV pod, and they do play on the wheel. So obviously massively important market for us. We've done a lot of work trying to further improve the force feedback that comes through the wheels and further support wheels this year. There'll be some returning favourites this year, being able to do a complete Grand Prix season as a licensed driver. That's something in 2012 I think we were keen to put in so that it was quicker to get into a race. It was quite clunky and a fairly long process in 2010 and 11. In 2012 we lost the ability to be able to chain races together, so obviously that's back this year. Tyre scaling as well. And the decision to take it out of 2012 was based on the fact that you could begin to learn about how many laps a certain tyre would do. So the design decision was sound, but actually people liked the idea of doing a 25% race and still experiencing the number of pit stops that they would do in a longer race, even if it meant pitting every 2 or 3 laps. And we're absolutely fine to put it back in when people are feeding back. That was one of the decisions with the added difficulty level as well. It was clear that there was a gap there we needed to respond to. So on to Monza, very historic and legendary track. One of the I always tend to prefer the shorter tracks. That always makes you feel in contention in the races. So Brazil, Monza, they're fast and free flowing, and lots of opportunities to overtake. So the character heads here in the garage and the animations in terms of that's all obviously still work in progress at the moment. But the uplift when you go back and look at last year's character heads, it's a giant leap forward. As is the entire garage environment. We really pushed hard on that boundary. But just if you compared side by side what you're seeing now in terms of visuals on 2013 with 2012, I mean, we're happy with all those areas of the game really, from the front end user interface all the way through to the, like I said, the track lighting and the rear view mirrors. They're much more useful this year.
There's this whole other side of the sport away from the track, and it's something I think a lot of the guys don't necessarily appreciate, that there's a huge build up towards the race. There's a lot of post race things to think about, and I guess a lot of folks wouldn't normally think, that's the thing that we need to focus on.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on some areas there which are, very much in our roadmaps going forward. I mean, there is so much that goes on behind the scenes, and the fastest car that hits the track at Melbourne at the start of a championship season isn't necessarily the fastest car at the end. You know, there's that technological race in the middle. How much fuel do you put in the car at the start? That's new for this year. So last year's game, you kind of set your starting fuel value. This year you can be more cautious or more aggressive, knowing that you're going to save fuel further down the line. You know, if you don't qualify in the top 10 and you've got a free choice on strategy, you know, do you let the front runners all slow each other up at the beginning, try and keep pace with your primes, play the longer game? Do you stop more times? So many different options available, and as I said, people who watch it on TV will begin to pick cars in their career and online based on their own driving traits. So, you know, you might want the Red Bull, for example, or the Lotus, because they're particularly kind on fuel. Lotus is particularly kind on tyres. McLaren's got more top-end speed and, you know, more fundamental grip when they get it in the right operating window. All these type of trends that we can play on. Same with the AI as well. From a driver's perspective, we've done quite a substantial work in terms of making them commit a bit more to overtakes in particular. Sometimes in the gameplay tests that we've had in the studio, we've had 4 cars abreast going into a corner. You know, drivers like Alonso and Hamilton are much more likely to go for a smaller gap than, say, a more rookie driver.
You have Grosjean taking people out of the race early. He will go straight for the first guy he sees and take him out into the runoff.
Certainly one of the things with the AO at the moment is they're a little bit more aggressive into the first few corners, and you are noticing a bit more front wings, etc., coming off. So we're just trying to balance that aggression versus outcome at the moment. So, you know, a whole grid of Grosjeans might not be the which is
dangerous race.
That's typically what you experience in multiplayer as well. You know, those players who kind of back out a little bit of the first corner carnage usually are the ones who end up challenging nearer the end,
Sure.
the end of the race. Obviously DRS and KERS as well carrying on into this year. DRS zones have changed based on the rule changes and you know, the tracks that they've moved onto. Nürburgring's come back in again. We've just had that race recently, and it's a great circuit. It's one that particularly we like to drive in the studio. So we'll be releasing 2 versions of Formula 1 this year. Both are targeted around the same release date as usual, the fall 2013. F1 2013 Classic Edition is going to have all the 80s content, all the 90s content, all the classic tracks, and the 2013 season. That's a kind of limited run, kind of get in there early and make sure you get your copy. In addition to that, there'll also be a standard version of the game, F1 2013, which comes with all the 2013 content, 1980s and Brands Hatch and Aref, with 90s and the other 2 classic tracks being available as DLC at a later date.
Great stuff. For everything that you could possibly want to know on F1 2013, just head over to GameSpot.com.